April 1st. No April Fool's jokes here as we are recording this show for this week. I'm Dan Watkins, joined as always by John McKechnie. John, got a fun one in store here. We're going to talk a little SP+. We're going to talk about the Ohio State University and Ryan Day's Netflix viewings that he has been watching and helping him kind of analyze his football team as they head into the 2026 season with a lot of turnover. We got some NFL draft stuff too to talk about, and of course, finally, I should say, not of course, but finally, it seems like we can put the Trinidad Chambliss saga to bed as, well, the NCAA I think was just about dealt like just go away.
Yeah, thank God for that. Because we love talking about Trinidad Chambliss. We like talking about him on the field. We don't like so much having to go with the back and forth court stuff. So it's nice that the NCAA was put in its place. But let's get into some SP+, man. This is always a fun time of year. Bill C kind of like blessing the college football community with stuff to talk about. So I want to hear what kind of caught your eye to start.
Absolutely, and we will do that. But first, I just want to say thank you very much for watching, guys. We're College Football Tailgate. Find us, follow us, subscribe to the channel. Doesn't cost you anything. Hit that subscribe button there on the lower corner at College Football Tailgate. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts as well. Same handle, College Football Tailgate. You can find us over on Twitter, CFB Tailgate 25, and we are also on TikTok where there's always just a lot of fun in the comment sections at CFB Tailgate. John, I was surprised that our South Carolina clip did as well as it did, but the Gamecock faithful, they are out in full force here in the spring as they are ready to go, and from what I hear, if the offensive line holds up, this might be an 8-win football team.
The spring chickens, indeed. I think you can kind of apply that logic to a lot of teams, but obviously it was an issue for them last year. I think part of what made them so effective a couple years ago was having like a really good running back to tandem with Lenoris Sellers. So hopefully like that guy will be on the roster this time around. They can find their next Rocket Sanders or whatever. I think, we talked a little bit last week about what South Carolina is bringing back and just the sort of like the spotlight's off them a little bit. Last year the block got a little bit hot when it came to South Carolina. They were probably a little bit too buzzy and fell short of expectations. But the Beamer always thrives when no one's looking. So, again, I feel like 8 wins. That would certainly be an improvement, and I think that would certainly help. Keep old Beamer's job security and keep that seat a little bit cooler than it is right now.
Absolutely. 8 wins would be job saving, I think, for Shane Bieber in 2026. So we were talking a lot about South Carolina last week because Bill C. or Bill Connolly at ESPN put out his returning production rankings, and they were right up towards the top of that list there. Bill has dropped the SP Plus for this week, and that's what we're going to talk about here. If you're curious, South Carolina comes in at number 24. But anyways, John, I'll just run over the top 5 here and how Bill puts this together. He factors in returning production, recent history, recent recruiting, and coaching change effects too when he's putting out his preseason or post-spring SP Plus rankings. These are the initial one for 2026. Top 5, Ohio State at 1, Oregon at 2, Notre Dame at 3, Georgia at 4, Indiana at 5. John, the thing that jumped out to me right away was that Ohio State was ranked number 1. And this is not a knock on the Buckeyes. I'm just shocked that they were number 1 because, well, the first thing Bill says that he factors in is returning production. And as we saw last week, they were a little lower on that list, mostly because there's just a ton of turnover on that defense. And we're going to get into this more as we really break down Ohio State and put the spotlight on them with how things have been going at spring practice. But, it's not just that there's a lot of turnover. There is a lot of elite turnover on that defense. If you look at Mel Kiper's big board, just the big board for the upcoming draft, 4 of the top 21 guys are from the Ohio State defense. 3 of the top 10, right? And I'm talking about Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs. All 3 could be top 10 picks in a matter of weeks. And then you got McDonald, the defensive tackle there too. Curry, the defensive end, I believe is gone as well. So they are replacing just some monsters on that defense. Now, if anybody's equipped to do it, it's Ohio State with how they recruit. But still, just so much turnover there. I was a little shocked that they came in at number 1. I figured they'd be top 10, but a little shocked that they're at number 1.
Yeah, agreed. And I think for those reasons that you state, so I think Ohio State's one of those rare cases where the sheer blue chip ratio, the sheer amount of talent on this roster, like their ability to, like they used to say about Alabama during the Saban heyday, like they don't rebuild, they just reload. This next group of guys that are going to be backfilling for the likes of Styles and Downs and Reese and all that, they're probably just as crazy as those guys were coming out of high school, even if we haven't really seen them, at the college level just yet. So I think that there's like reason to believe that Ohio State is just built in this particular era, and I think that spans beyond this era to really compete and really accrue the type of top end talent that you need to be able to survive losing the type of like roster turnover that we see. So like, whereas you might be like a little bit more worried about Indiana like being able to do that. Like we don't know if they can necessarily sustain. Ohio State, I feel like they're sort of the exception, not the rule. Like them and like Texas, I think are just sort of like a cut above the rest. We'll see if Texas Tech can get there as far as just like there's that financial
Oil
element,
money.
that
Oil
fiscal
money.
jackhammer that they have that is just going to keep them well stocked in the war chest.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see. Maybe next year he'll add a 5th qualifier and just put oil money at number 5 there for factoring in for the initial rankings. Going down a little further down this list here, LSU comes in at number 10. I'm not shocked that LSU's, top 10 when it comes to the SP+. It's more so that, he has them ranked as the number 2 defense and the number 21 offense. And I was just like, has that ever happened with a Lane Kiffin team? Where you have elite defense and your offense might be just like borderline top 20. That seems wild to me, but I'm wondering, are we setting up, one, for LSU to live up to these expectations? Because they are pretty big, and it looks like this roster is loaded and ready to go. But could we see more of like a classic LSU team in 2026, John, compared to what we're expecting from like a Lane Kiffin team? And what I mean by that is a smash mouth defense that is like one of the best in the country, and that's how they're winning games, where they score when they need to, but it's not like they're just like putting up 45 points a game.
This is going to be really interesting to see how this all distills, because like you're saying, like the ingredients on this roster point to that of the classic LSU team, but Lane, that there's sort of like a whiplash of that when it comes to, okay, well, Lane Kiffin's the coach, and I go on the radio in Ruston, Louisiana every Tuesday, so obviously we talk about LSU a decent bit, and yesterday we were talking about just sort of like expectations and the management thereof for LSU this year, and I'm like, there's no managing of expectations for a roster that has $40 million dumped into it, for a roster that has Sam Levitt on it, for a roster that is controlled by Lane Kiffin. Like I just, especially in this era where Kurt Cignetti took Indiana to the playoff in his first year, you're LSU, man. Like 10 wins, I think is sort of like if you don't hit that benchmark, what the hell happened? I think.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Like LSU should be a playoff team in 2026. That's my expectation for them. I don't want to hear anything about managing expectations and that kind of stuff and just letting Lane find his footing. Lane Kiffin is not there to find his footing in year one. Lane Kiffin is there to deliver and get LSU back to the playoff for the first time since they won the national championship. 7 years ago now it's going to be?
Oh boy.
So like
makes me feel old.
Right? Pre-COVID was the last time. So for the first time in the post-pandemic world, LSU needs to make the playoffs this year. Like these expectations are there for a reason, and I do think it's promising to see that. This defense should be pretty good too.
Yes, the defense, especially like the trenches, and we talked about it a little bit during the season this past year as well, where it's like I liked what Ole Miss had in 2024 defensively. I think that's what like kind of made them a more dangerous team. Now, obviously, Ole Miss went further this past year and actually made the CFP, everything like that. But like, I thought that was like an encouraging sign of Lane Kiffin kind of adapting and understanding where like some of his shortcomings had been previously as a head coach, which was kind of ignoring the trenches and just kind of trusting that he would be able to outscore everybody with his defense. Now LSU, they had some guys already, and through this recruiting class and through the transfer portal, like their trenches are, I think right up there with the best in the country, especially on the defensive side. And that's I think going to be something that really is going to help like kind of raise that floor and keep them competitive in every single game.
Yeah, the pieces are all there. That is for sure. Another one that jumped out to me, USC coming in at number 13. So we know with Lincoln Riley, right, the offense is going to be good. I think Bill Connolly has them as the 6th ranked offense according to SP Plus. But what if Lincoln Riley, has a top 30 defense? He has USC's defense coming in at number 29 right now in these initial rankings. Like, this is interesting to me. We've talked about USC's schedule. It's workable. They have some of their bigger games at home. I think expectations for the Trojans this year should be pretty high too. And can they creep into, like, we have this mindset, right? And we're thinking, like, when we think of the Big Ten, right, there's 3 teams at the top: Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, and then there's a cutoff. Can USC creep in to that top, like make that a top 4, or even a top 5 if Michigan lives up to some expectations too? But what do you expect out of USC? Did this surprise you that they come in at number 13?
I definitely understand the optimistic case for USC this year. I feel like they've been building to this. They brought in a great recruiting class as well that they put a lot of work into building. And, you could obviously argue that high school recruiting doesn't mean the same that it used to. And, if you get, 1 or 2 impact freshmen, that's great, but it matters more if you can do what Indiana did and get those like 22, 23-year-olds to in and all of a sudden you have a little bit more of an advantage because you have a little bit more experience. So if you look at the kind of general shape of the SP Plus grades for the Big Ten and how they stack up. So Ohio State obviously up top, and then there's like a clear top tier. That it's Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana, and then there's a pretty clear tier drop. It looks like where you get to teams like USC, Michigan, and even Penn State actually, which catches my eye a little bit as well. But I think when you look at USC, yes, it stinks that you lose guys like Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane, but we'll have to see if their running backs can be back to 100%. They're really bit by attrition there as far as injury goes last year. But I'm a big Maava believer. I believe I had him in my top 5 quarterback rankings. I think Lincoln Riley can scheme up an offense, obviously, and if there can be a defensive component that is just some version of not terrible, some version of like trustworthy, man, I think that all of a sudden you have the ingredients there to where this top tier in the Big Ten, maybe you have to make like a little bit of a softening of an exception there, but it's one where I think USC could be in that conversation behind schools like Oregon and Indiana, or be closer to them than what the SP Plus is telling us right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm pretty high on Maava going into this season too. He might have led the country, but he definitely led the Big Ten in passing a year ago. He returns, right, 3rd year in the Lincoln Riley offense. We know that they're going to churn out receivers too, even losing a guy like Mekhi Lemon to the NFL. Like, he's going to have plenty to work with. We both talked about that running back room with King Miller, one of the best names in college football, running the ball there. So that offense is going to be good. And like you said, if Lincoln has a semi-decent defense, okay, now I want to see this. Like finally, like, is everything there for USC to get back to and make the playoffs finally too? You mentioned Penn State. I do have them on my list, so let's just hit on them right now. Penn State and Oklahoma State too. I'm going to throw them on there. It feels like we're like resetting our expectations and we're back to like kind of normal after some very down years. So Penn State comes in at number 17 on this list, right? Top 25, both offense and defense, where historically it feels like Penn State should be. And when you think of Penn State, you think that should be a top 20 school when it comes to their football program. And then Oklahoma State, they're coming in the top 40 at number 38. So like, I just feel like a little sense of normalcy is going to return to both Happy Valley and Stillwater as well in 2026.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons for both of these schools to feel great about how this hiring cycle went. I think obviously we've made a ton of Penn State. It's like, oh my God, they are going to get left out of these musical chairs. And then at the 11th hour, they're able to pull Matt Campbell from Ames. And then in Oklahoma State's case, they were the other end of the spectrum. Like they were very quick and aggressive to get Eric Morris from North Texas, and you got the big players that made North Texas as dangerous as they were a year ago. It starts with the quarterback. It starts with Mestamaker. Caleb Hawkins, I think, is just a total beast. That just, it feels right. It makes sense to see a kind of like workhorse running back at Oklahoma State. Felt weird not having one last year. So, I think OK State bounces back. I think that they're going to at least be able to, I think while the defense catches up a little bit and they build up the trenches a bit, I think there's enough pieces in this offense to make them, at least like feisty, competitive. And I agree with like a top 40 type of ranking for them. Penn State, I'm not quite as sure because I'm not as familiar with like the Iowa State guys that Campbell brought over. He basically just brought over the entirety of the Cyclone roster. So we'll see how that all gels.
I like Becht at quarterback. I think he's going to
Sure.
fit in nicely there at Penn State, and they should be back right flirting around that like 8-9 win mark. I think in year one for Matt Campbell.
Yeah, I think that's about right, and we'll see if Campbell's able to kind of like sustain that. Like one thing about Franklin, even though he always came up short in the big games, was those rosters were always stocked with talent. Can Campbell keep that going as well?
Absolutely. And then one that just jumped out to me that I think this team is way too high, and I am going to finger wag the computer here. Tennessee. Tennessee comes in with not only a top 5 offense, with a gigantic question mark at quarterback. Bill Connolly has them ranked as the 4th offense, according to SP Plus, coming into 2026, but number 15 overall. And that defense, John, comes in at number 50. So I'm just curious how Tennessee creeps into the top 15 here, right? Joey Aguilar's gone. We don't know who the quarterback is. I look at every other team in at least the top 18, right, until you get to Florida. But even Florida, we have a pretty general idea of who the quarterback's going to be. I know who all the other quarterbacks are, and leading their offenses around where they have Tennessee, all the way from Ohio State at number 1, all the way down to BYU at 18. 17 of those 18 schools, I can tell you who's going to be under center week 1. Tennessee is a gigantic question mark. I just don't see it. I don't think Tennessee's going to have a very successful season. I know Jim Knowles is there now too, but are we so sure that Jim Knowles is just going to be able to instantly fix this defense and like have them playing respectable? Because it's not like he has the talent that he had at Ohio State a few years ago, or even at Penn State last year.
Yeah, this feels like an interesting, like Bill's kind of like going out on a limb here a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of trust that the Heupel system just is inevitable, is one that's always going to just be able to put up points no matter how familiar we are with the components in it. And then defensively, yeah, I'm a little suspect on it as well. So like just on its face, within the conference, I like Ole Miss better, I like Missouri better, and I'll take Tennessee over Florida, but like that's about where I'm drawing the line. Like so I would move 2 of these fellow SEC teams that are fringe top 20 ahead of this Tennessee team. It does feel a little bit hasty putting them all the way up at 15 with all the question marks all over the place.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think they're right in that Florida, Auburn, Tennessee. I mean, Vandy's got some gigantic questions this year too with everything that they're replacing, but I feel like they're all in that like solid, almost like I'm going to call them C tier of the SEC. Like I feel like that is the C tier of that conference because obviously we know what's up at the top there, but like I have them a rung below, the Oklahomas and the Ole Misses, like just like you do as too.
Yeah, Oklahoma's sort of like the equator for me in the SEC. It's like do I respect them or not? Like it all just sort of like hinges on do I have them above or below Oklahoma.
Week by week, every week I'll just flip flop on it, and then one more from me. UMass isn't last. Can you believe it? UMass comes in at number 137 out of 138. Bill Connolly and his computer actually have a school ranked below the UMass Minutemen, who went 0-12 last season. But Charlotte comes in at 138. Tough sledding there for Charlotte.
Charlotte kind of like had a little bit of mojo going on in the early part of this decade that is completely dried up. So it's one thing for UMass to not be in last, but you kind of would have expected it to be because there's a new team jumping up into the FBS. But no, like Sacramento State is 7 spots ahead of UMass. So yeah, I think more than anything, tisk to Charlotte. I still can't believe how poorly the Biff Poggi experiment went there at Charlotte. Now they're really kind of reeling here.
That is tough. That is very tough. Anything else here on this list that you want to hit on before we move on and put the spotlight on Ohio State?
So maybe it's because I lived there for a long time. I've got a bit of a soft spot, but could this year, with all the attention being off Wisconsin right now, I don't know. I like the quarterback that they brought in, Colton Joseph from Old Dominion. I think him above all else gives Wisconsin a little bit of juice at the quarterback position. Now, if they can avoid being that team that, if you've seen the movie Spinal Tap, where the drummer just always dies in weird and bizarre ways, that's basically what the quarterback position has been at Wisconsin under Fickle. So I think Fickle has his own faults, but I do think it hasn't helped. That the quarterback injuries have piled up so much. So if Colton Joseph can stay healthy, I'd like to believe that maybe Wisconsin can show a little bit of proof of concept that maybe this Fickle hire wasn't the worst thing ever for this program the way it's shaping up right now.
Yeah, I'm looking at them. So the computer has them ranked at number 61 right now. 22nd ranked defense. So, maybe grind out some games there, but 106th when it comes to offense there for Wisconsin. When you think of the Wisconsin offenses, right, you think of big linemen and a great power run game. And I feel like it's been a few years since we've seen that. Now, I think we talked a little bit earlier in the offseason that, they're trying to get back to that here in 2026. So we'll see how that plays out. But right now, the computer not very high on Wisconsin in their initial ranking.
Yeah, they betrayed what got them here. They betrayed the ground game in lieu of these flashy spread offensive type of things that are just never going to work up in Madison. Just play big boy ball. You get the corn-fed guys in there, get a running back from New Jersey, and press play. That's what they need to do. That's what they've gotten away from. Get back to that, and then also get Colton Joseph going. And all of a sudden, I'm pretty interested once again.
Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, let's stay in the Big Ten. Let's talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes. John, Ohio State comes into 2026 on a 2-game losing streak, right? 2025, this was supposed to be the best team ever assembled. They go 12-0 in the regular season, and then they lose the Big Ten championship game to Indiana, and then they go one and done and fall in the Cotton Bowl to Miami, and it's just see you later as Miami ends up going to the national championship game, right? It's just weird to the expectations of Ohio State. We talked about that there is a ton of turnover here, losing guys like Caleb Downs and Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese on defense, and then losing Carnell Tate on offense. There's a lot of elite turnover, but as we mentioned, right, if there's anybody that is equipped to do it, it's Ohio State with the way they recruit. So Ohio State comes in with the number 3 recruiting class for 2026, number 36 portal class. They did not have to really go all out in the portal because they have backfilled so nicely when it comes to recruiting. They are either the favorite or the co-favorite to win the national championship. You can get much better odds at DraftKings. If you are looking to bet the Buckeyes, you got plus 700 over there compared to 550 on FanDuel right now, where there is a clear gap between Ohio State and the rest of the team. Interesting quote from Ryan Day during spring practice this week, as he's talking about roster turnover too. So this is on Tuesday. Day talks about how he started watching this Netflix documentary on dinosaurs and how it reminded him that having half of his roster be new is just part of the new age of college football, and surviving in this new age of college football is about adapting, right? So here's the quote. If you want to feel insignificant, watch that. Some dinosaurs figured out how to adapt, and some die. So Ryan Day trying to adapt here. The guy has just been so good throughout his career, right? Ohio State has not lost more than 2 games, in the regular season since 2011. That was the interim Luke Fickell year that they lost more than 2 games. Their win total sitting at 9.5, guys. Heavy juice to the over at minus 160 right now. But they are going to be replacing that high-end talent, possibly 3 top 10 draft picks, 4 to 5 first-round picks. There's talk of them possibly breaking the record of having 14 guys, their own school record of having 14 guys drafted this year. But like I said, if there's anybody who can do it, it's Ohio State. So when you look at this team, right, I think it comes down to, does Julian Sayin continue to progress and take that next step from what he was a year ago, which was a Heisman finalist, right? Is there another level for Julian Sayin? And then on defense, right, do they figure it out here and just have some more elite recruits step right up and fill those shoes of the Reese and the Styles and the Downs and so on? But what are you expecting out of Ohio State here this season?
Man, it's so fascinating with Ohio State because you can get so granular with it. Like, you can point to just, like, the sheer amount of talent on the roster. You can point to a position group and be like, oh, man, who's got it better than them at that spot, at this spot, and the other. And yet I'm going to boil it down to, like, something that's like, pretty simple. Who's Julian Sayin when the chips are down? Because in those last 2 games against Indiana and against Miami, he shrunk a little bit. And I think that it's
Pressure
probably
unfair.
I think it's probably not fair to, like, write him off or say, like, he could never, take a step forward. He could never, come through in the big moments. But the question's out there now. Like, we need to see Julian Sayin in these big moments step up. And how many opportunities are there going to be for the Buckeyes? Because I think, probably 9 of these weeks this year, they're going to be, like, upwards of 3-score favorites. But, I think you start with a look at how he does in Austin, Texas early on in the season. Week 2, I think, is something that I'm really circling as far as how I view this Ohio State team this year. And I know it might be a bad process to sink it into one game, but I think that one's going to be telling because I'm pretty bullish on Texas this year. I hold my nose as I say that. But I think even if Ohio State loses, we're going to get better odds on them to win the national championship. But if Sayin looks the part and he's not the reason why they lose, all of a sudden I'm going to feel better about this Ohio State team generally, because I think we see in college football where a defense can gel over the course of the season. We saw Georgia do it last year where they were replacing a lot of guys. They were pretty suspect defensively to start the year. By the end of the year, pretty strong defensively. I think Ohio State can have something like that where they overcome the roster turnover on the defensive side. Ultimately, I want to see what Julian Sayin does when the chips are down.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's where I think this starts and ends when it comes to Ohio State, and if they live up to expectations and can get back to the national title game, right? So Sayin leads the country in completions and completion percentage last year. 32-8 touchdown to interception ratio, throws for over 3,600 yards. Obviously, he's got the best player in college football coming back in Jeremiah Smith, right? We know he's going to be a monster. Outside of that, in that wide receiver room, I'm seeing a lot of hype starting to build for Brandon Inniss as that next burst out Ohio State receiver. He's going to be in the slot. He is back for his senior year. Chris Henry Jr. Commits to Ohio State, true freshman. We're going to see him as well. I really do like Bo Jackson in the backfield. I thought he ran the ball really well down the stretch there. Coming on strong in those last 7 games, averaging close to 6 yards per carry. I think he's solid. He'll be there too. But my one question with this offense, how does Arthur Smith handle this? Yeah. Right? How does he translate to the college ranks after so many years in the NFL? This is the guy that could not figure it out and would take the ball out of Bijan Robinson's hands to give to Tyler Algier in Atlanta. You got some massive weapons here at Ohio State. Don't overthink the room, Artie. I don't love this hire at all. I'm just going to put it that way.
I don't think you'd find many people that do love it. I think the only way I can spin it positively is nobody really loved the Matt Patricia hire last year on the defensive side. So it's maybe there's a level of it's a little bit easier to figure things out at the college level, or you can deploy like 80% of the complexity to your team, to the side of the ball that you're coaching, and it's still way more like mind blowing to the opponent that you're going against. Like Ohio State's defense last year was incredible. It's like the best Matt Patricia defense we had seen in a long time. You'd probably be able to point to specific examples when he was in New England. So maybe there's something like that when it comes to Arthur Smith. And I would be interested if there's one thing that I'll give Arthur Smith credit for at various points of his coaching career in the NFL. I mostly look at the Tennessee days, and I guess you could probably give a lot of that credit to Derrick Henry. But if he's able to scheme like the run game back, because that was a gripe that we kept coming back to with this Ohio State team last year, is like, where's the offensive line play? Like, why isn't it just completely like blowing people off the ball? And why aren't they just like gashing people with the run game? We were so used to it the year prior with Judkins and with Henderson. Obviously, Bo Jackson is only one man, and he's pretty young in his career, but would like to see. And I'm leaving the door open basically for the possibility of Arthur Smith getting this ground game going a little bit. That is like kind of the one feather in his cap, I feel like, schematically.
Yeah, my one pushback for anybody that does want to bring in that Matt Patricia angle, right, and look what he did last year, would be, are we sure that Ohio State has 4 first-round picks, 3 top 10 picks on this offense right now? They definitely have one. We know they have one. But who else, right? Does maybe Brandon Inniss becomes a first-round pick a year from now? Who knows? Maybe Julian Saint's a first-round pick in a year from now. But still, that offensive line, I think, is a gigantic question mark right now. They're talking about shuffling pieces. I mean, pretty much at every single school across the country, the offensive line is a gigantic question mark right now. They're just trying to find those 5 guys that can seamlessly work together. But anyways, yeah, that's my big question with the Buckeyes. Defensively, I'm sure they'll be good. I don't really have a question. It's just I don't know if they're going to be elite. And I do think this schedule is really interesting because there's some tough road spots. And I'm going to pull this schedule up for you guys. John mentioned already week 2 at Austin, right? That place is going to be buzzing. But we have a trip to Kinnick as well in early October. You got a back-to-back stretch against USC and Indiana. Indiana's the first game there. You have a bye week squeezed in. But anyways, and then you have to go at Nebraska too in November. This is a sneaky, tough road schedule for the Buckeyes here this year, John. And with a win total sitting at 9.5, I know it feels like sacrilege, but I might actually consider taking the under at plus money.
And then, I mean, at that point, you're completely out on them winning the national championship, and I think you're
9-3.
I'd be interested to see what the miss the playoffs, odds are at that point if you like the under as well, because it's a tough slate for them. Again, you warm up against Ball State, then you go to Austin early in the year, and it's also it's just one of those things early in the year. Good God, it's going to be hot in Austin. Depending on what time they do kick off for that game, if that's big noon or something, good God, you're going to get those sideline reporter standing there with the big thermometer, just being like, "This hurts to be outside," and the cleats are melting. And then that stretch where you get Indiana bye week, at USC, and then home against Oregon. Woo! That's another really tough stretch for the Buckeyes there. So there's not a lot of reprieves in here. There's a lot of toughies, and even if Nebraska is able to take a step forward, which end of the season Nebraska could be good, could be bad. That's
who knows,
interesting in Lincoln. Yeah,
who
knows? And then I'm kind of out on Michigan right now, but that's always a game. And that will be in Columbus. It is the game. They call it that. So I'm going to say that Ohio State gets to 10 wins, but I'm more open to the possibility of Drago bleeding this year than I was last year,
Yeah, no, I hear you. I just think there are plenty of spots where they could trip up. If Indiana is now this perennial power, that's going to be a brutal spot there to go into Bloomington and try to pull off a win there. I think Texas wins that game. We do actually have an early line out right now, 2.5. Longhorns are favored at home. I would lay the points there right now with Texas. I think they get that one.
Same.
And then right? The Nebraska game is going to be a look-ahead spot with Michigan on deck. And if Michigan is, let's say they're flirting around like 8-3, right, going into that one, like that's going to be an interesting spot too. So there's just a lot of tricky spots, and we know Lincoln Riley at USC, right? They are so much better at home than they are on the road. So I'm going to be interested to see what that line's going to be too. Like if you're giving me a touchdown with USC at home, I might be thinking about taking the Trojans there as well.
So a little bit, as opposed to like the last 2 years, I would say with Ohio State, where it's like, dear God, like they're the Death Star. This year, it's a little bit more open for interpretation. I think you're justified if you're still optimistic about Ohio State, but I think I'm more willing to listen to you if you're like, wait a second, on this Ohio State team than we have seen in recent years.
Yeah, so once again, Ohio State's win total, guys, 9.5 going into 2026. The Buckeyes have not lost more than 2 games in a season since 2011, right? Like, that was when I graduated high school. So it's been that long since Ohio State has lost 3 games in a year. Ryan Day has never lost more than 2 games, obviously, because of that. So, like, it's interesting, but that's why to get over 9.5 is heavily juiced there at minus 160. All right, a couple other little notes here before we get to some draft stuff. Trinidad Chambliss cleared a major legal hurdle this past week to be able to play in 2026, right? Like, so basically the courts in Mississippi told the NCAA to go pound sand and kick rocks. You're not going to be able to appeal this. So Chambliss going to be under center for the Rebs in 2026. But he's, at the podium talking after spring practice, took a little subtle jab, John, at Lane Kiffin. He was asked about the difference between his current coach, Pete Golding, and his own old coach, Lane Kiffin. Quote, "The personalities are a little different. Our old coach and Coach Golding, I'd say he's more of a team guy. We really value his leadership. Whatever he says, he shows you faster than I can tell you. He leads by his actions, and we really appreciate it." So maybe maybe Ole Miss can roll that rah-rah, like let's rally around Lane leaving us, right? Maybe they can roll that in to the 2026 season. I mean, they do get the chance to play Lane Kiffin and LSU in the month of September. So that game's going to be so much fun. I can't wait for that one. But I don't know if they're going to be able to ride this throughout the entire season, but they might still be able to get a little boost from it in the month of September anyway.
I think so. I think that it's interesting just the amount of stuff that's come out from behind the scenes about how this team viewed Lane Kiffin and how everything went down and kind of like how damaging that whole saga was for his reputation and in his legacy in Oxford. And you've got a bunch of these guys that were his players that are staying at Ole Miss, not all of them, of course. But I think Golding, he showed during the playoffs that like these guys love him. Like like these guys are ready to ride for Golding. So that sets up obviously one of the games of the year and one of the best like possible like message board. Get your Geiger counter out when you log into whichever message board site you like to use for either I forget what LSU and Ole Misses are, but Ole Miss Spirit I think is one of them. But yeah, that's going to be, my God, the message boards and yeah. So I love a little subtle shot. Lane Kiffin is extremely vain. I think he's extremely good as a coach, but yeah, I think that's fair to kind of give him a little FU, I think, on the way out.
Yeah, absolutely. And like if LSU does win that game, I can't wait. I'm sure Kiffin's going to find somehow to work what Chambliss said this week into what he says post game. So going to be
he's
a lot
like an
of
elephant. He does not forget. Like he's a true blue poster, which is rare among these college football coaches. But Lane knows how to be online. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Would love to see if like his bookmarks leaked, like what he's got saved. Like I'm sure it would be absolutely incredible. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the NFL draft. The NFL draft, guys, gets underway 3 weeks from tomorrow. So that's 3 weeks from tomorrow, which would be April 2nd, brings us to April 23rd. That is when the first round of the NFL draft gets underway. The Las Vegas Raiders going to be on the clock, most likely taking Fernando Mendoza with that first overall pick. John, the wide receiver class this year is interesting. Starting to drop a little buzz here because it seems like there's like a top 3 and then there's a little bit of a drop off when it comes to the rest of this class. But I want to ask you, right? Carnell Tate is the heavy favorite to be the first overall taken. First wide receiver taken in this draft. I'm going to re-rack this. Carnell Tate is the odds-on favorite to be the first wide receiver selected in the 2026 NFL Draft. You go over to DraftKings right now, he is minus 300 to be the first wide receiver selected, which I think is a little crazy. He very well could be. I just think those odds are a little nuts there. But John, I'm going to ask you, not necessarily who's the first guy taken, but who is the best wide receiver in this draft class?
I do stick with Tate. I know it's kind of a boring answer, but I do feel like, and I did some kind of like deep dive study type stuff for this in my day job, looking at like combine performance versus like actual production in the NFL. And like the guys that rock out at the combine, very rarely do they translate into like tons of like on-field success. Like most of the guys that were finishing in the top 10 in fantasy points scoring last year at the NFL level were like average or slightly below average athletes. So like I don't ding Carnell. Long way of saying I don't ding Carnell Tate for running the 4.52. And if anything, like I respect him for going out there and testing, whereas Mekhi Lemon and Jordan Tyson did not. I know that that's their call if they want to do it at their pro days and everything like that, but I respect someone, especially these days where there's so many opt-outs at the combine. I do kind of like give a little extra like boost for guys that do actually test at the combine. And then beyond that, Ohio State just like that is wide receiver you like until we have like a lot of reasons to doubt it. It's like, and I know helmet scouting is lazy or whatever, but I mean, show me an Ohio State receiver that's been taken in the first round that really stinks. I don't think I could really see one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back really to like Michael Thomas in 2017, like Ohio State has just churned out studs in the first round when it comes to their wide receivers. My one concern with Tate, right, is the fact that he played on the other side of Jeremiah Smith, right? Yeah. And he has this monster year. So that's my one concern. Like if he's like gets put into a situation where he's like immediately expected to be number one, like kind of game wrecker, like I think that could be tough for him to live up to those expectations. Because when I watch him compared to some of the other guys that have come out of Ohio State recently, I do think he's a solid tier below compared to like the Olave, Wilson, JSN, those guys that have come out recently.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, those guys all had like those sort of nuclear games where it's like, oh man, like that guy's going to be a massive problem. I mean, even Marvin Harrison Jr., to add another one, even if it hasn't like totally worked out for him yet. Like
I blame those guys there.
Yeah, those guys all had, they all sort of had these like really loud data points. Whereas like Tate, like it took a while for him. Like it always felt like he was overshadowed by other guys, whether it's Jeremiah Smith, whether it's Emeka Egbuka type of deal, and maybe like he won't be able to have that same downfield success that he did in college if he has that 4.5 speed or whatever. So he's gonna have to win in a different way. But I don't know. He seems to me like he's got polish, and based on what I was saying there about like testing versus production, there's like a kind of like hidden skill component to the wide receiver position that I think it trumps all else, and I feel like Tate has it.
Fair. For me, like I think who's ultimately going to be the number one, the best wide receiver from this class when we look back, I think it's going to be Jordan Tyson, right? If he can stay healthy. Big if. He's got some injury concerns there. But like this dude, he lines up everywhere. He is a true game wrecker. Yes, he's been playing at Arizona State, right? So Big 12 defense is a little different from SEC or Big 10 defenses. But I love the profile of Jordan Tyson. You see the elite athleticism and the traits there with him. Like if he finds himself in like the right spot, like he's going to be an absolute monster. And yes, you could say that about Tate and Lemon, but I feel like with Tate, right, we know he is your classic X receiver. Lemon is your volume hog in the slot, where Jordan Tyson can do all of that, and you can put him pretty much anywhere, and he's going to fit in seamlessly. Good size, 6'2", 200. Just the big question mark with Tyson is his health, because it seems like every year something just pops up with him. But if he can stay healthy, this is my guy.
Yeah, the one time it didn't, and I'm going to start calling you Sun Devil Dan at this point, but
Forks up.
The one time that he stayed healthy, I mean, true workhorse wide receiver type of stuff in 2024 from him. Like, he had like basically if Cam Scadaboo wasn't running the ball, it was Jordan Tyson catching it. Like there were two components to that Arizona State offense. Like that, he probably had like a 35 or 40% target share. Like that's just preposterous. And Tyson like delivered with that. High yards per target, tons of touchdowns, tons of yardage. So I get it. Like he has that alpha ability. I'm just again kind of like what you were alluding to. Would love to not be so concerned about the durability, but the talent is pretty obvious when it comes to Tyson. Absolutely.
So fair enough. All right. So how about the rest of your top five? So you got Tate at 1. Give me 2 through 5.
All right. So this is a little bit like unconventional, but I got Mekhi Lemon 2. That's somewhat conventional. I still believe in him despite his kind of weird antics at the combine. The production, I think, speaks for itself. I think his teammate Jacoby Lane kind of looks to me like a poor man's Michael Pittman or something like that. Big-bodied receiver. I do like his ability, and he's got good athleticism too. Not to say that athleticism means nothing. And then I think Elijah Surratt is a guy that is just like he's so physical at the catch point. I love the mentality that he plays with. He might not have the most explosive athleticism, but that guy can play, and that guy can play out wide. I think he's going to have a successful career. I'm going to throw Ted Hurst out there as my like sort of wild card out of Georgia State. He's a guy that I think, as Greg Cosell put it earlier this week, if he's playing at a bigger school, this is a guy that's conventionally being talked about as a potential first rounder. Great production, great combine, a lot to great measurables on Hurst. Kind of built like your prototypical X receiver. So I like Hurst a good bit, and then I'll throw Skylar Bell as a bit of an honorable mention. He was a little stuck in the mud at Wisconsin. Crushed it these past couple of years at UConn. Totally carried that offense. So that's always something that's pretty interesting and convincing to me. Skylar Bell definitely checks that box.
Fair enough. So for me, Tyson's number 1. I got Mekhi Lemon in number 2 as well, right? Volume hog, your power slot. You can see why everybody's saying this is like Amon-Ra St. Brown 2.0.
Yep.
Other than, besides the obvious that they both went to USC. Just Lemon, like, the dude's going to be a monster. And, like, I'm scared for the rest of the NFL if Sean McVay does get his hands on him, right? Cool. If he goes to the Rams, which just seems like the hot rumor that the Rams are going to find a way to get him in the first round, like, look out. He's going to be a monster. And he'll probably be your wide receiver 1 when it comes to rookie drafts, I would have to think, if that is the case and that's the fit there. I got Tate coming in at number 3. Another reason why I have Lemon and Tyson ahead of Tate is because I do think they're a little better with the ball in their hands once they get it. Where, I don't know, that classic just X down the field receiver, which is how I kind of view Tate a little bit, I don't like as much as the guy who can go over the middle and do a little bit of everything and just be better after the catch too. So I got Tate at 3. I'm going to go Omar Cooper at number 4 out of Indiana, right? Mainly a guy in the slot, can line up a little bit outside as well, which he was doing in 2024. He was a touchdown machine, guys. I think he had like 13 touchdowns this past year, and his average yards per catch was like 13.1, which is just an absurd little stat there when it comes to Omar Cooper. Number 5, this is an interesting one because you're starting to see him creep into like the end of the first round in mock drafts. KC Concepcion out of Texas A&M. You can see the elite traits, the physical traits with him when you watch the tape. The problem is he doesn't always catch the ball.
Yeah.
And there's a drop issue. So all the tools are there. Just hang on to the damn ball, man. And then my dark horse out of this class, you're going to like this, Zach Branch.
Okay.
I've had a thing for Zach Branch since he was a freshman and took that kickback against San Jose State in week 1 when he was with USC. I love a little gadget guy that can do a little bit of everything, but he's tough as nails too. Like, he made a lot of big catches and can just move, and he's fast as hell as well. So, like, there's going to be a place for him, and if gets in the right hands with a creative offensive coordinator, like, he's going to be a fun guy to watch, I think, at the next level.
Yeah, like to me, Branch, if the Rams were to miss on Lemon in the first round, like, Branch sometime on day 2 would be like a nice consolation because he can do similar stuff, and they drafted Tutu Atwell. Zach Branch is like if Tutu Atwell had some like physicality to him, but same like kind of small, spindly guy with blazing speed. he's a lot of fun to dream on. KCC, I think, is a super interesting guy, like you were mentioning there, as your number 5. And with Omar Cooper, I mean, it was hard to pick between the two Indiana guys this past year, and Omar Cooper, was responsible for the Gus Johnson call of the year against Penn State. That still rings in my head. One of the best.
Yeah, that should get him on any list right away. Just because of that. Getting that foot down. All right, before we wrap up, John, we're starting to see some draft position, props kind of pop up on DraftKings. The one that immediately jumped out to me, we got Caleb Downs with a 9.5 for his draft position, right? This guy's elite of an elite, and when it comes to just dudes that you want on your football team, Caleb Downs is at the very top of this draft class to me. I think if I had to, I'm going to put it this way: if I had to pick one guy from this draft that I think is going to be a Hall of Famer, Caleb Downs is my pick. Not to go full Kyle Pitts on everybody from a few years ago, where it was this is your surefire Hall of Famer, but Caleb Downs, I think, is one of one and going to be an elite safety in the NFL for a long time. And I don't think he gets out of the top 10. Does he get into the top 9? Going to be interesting. But just curious what you think of Downs and any of these other little position props that are up here so far, if you've seen them.
I'm with you on the player eval when it comes to Caleb Downs. I think that he was the best player on their defense when they won the national championship. I think he was, he didn't drop off at all last year, in my opinion, either. I think there's two things working against him right now, which is why his draft prop is posted at 9.5. One is the rumor about the knee. People are worried about that. And two is just, safety is conventionally not something that you draft in the top 10. But my counter to that is this draft stinks. He is one of the 3 or 4 best players in this draft, if not the best player in this draft. So position value be damned, I think, in the case of Downs, because what are you going to take an offensive lineman at 9 that would be the 20th overall pick most other years just because the positional value, whereas Downs in terms of just sheer big board ability is a top 5 player. Don't overthink it. GMs, I think that Downs should absolutely be a top 10, and I think he ultimately will, but I am interested to see how this goes for him.
Yeah, so just looking at the order, right, you got Raiders at 1, Jets 2, Cardinals 3, Titans 4, Giants 5, then you got the Browns, Commanders, Saints, Chiefs, Bengals to round out the top 10. I immediately think of Tyrann Mathieu, and look, you got both the Saints and the Chiefs right there at 8 and 9. My thought is, don't let the Chiefs get Caleb Downs. We don't need that. But the Saints, I know they need a lot of other stuff, but I don't know, Caleb Downs on the New Orleans Saints just feels right for some reason. Now that I'm thinking, I can see him in that secondary for the next decade and just being awesome.
I'm into that. Someone harmless like the Saints. Let's get a very good player over there as opposed to the Chiefs, who we are mutual enemies with.
Fair enough. All right, I think that's going to do it for us this week. Next week, we're definitely going to be talking more draft stuff as we get closer. It'll be about 2 weeks out. I'm sure more props and stuff like that will be out. Who knows what analysts will say something stupid that we can react to as well. But I think it's time we finally talk about the Georgia Bulldogs and put the spotlight on them too. So we will do that next week to get John excited. But anyways, for John, I'm Dan. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll talk to you next week.